Good afternoon. This is Jerry Hudson, and welcome into the Hudson Sports Zone. I am coming at you from sunny Las Vegas, Nevada. Today, we're going to do a recap of the Sunday football games around the NFL. Man, there was a lot of action. In Hudson Sports Zone, let's start off with this before I give you how I did against the spread. Which rookie quarterback do you think is having the best year so far? And the second question for you Hudson Sports Zone fans out there is, which rookie quarterback will be the best quarterback 10 years from now? We'll get back on that. Let's go right to the games. So far, I am 6-8-1 going into the Monday Nighter, and I do have Dallas laying the 4 tonight. So I'm looking to go 7-8-1. My push of the week was the Miami-Las Vegas Raider game. And I'll give you the wins and losses as we go. So from Thursday night, I won the Carolina game, laying 7.5. During the Baltimore-Detroit game yesterday, I said that Baltimore would beat them and beat them handily, that they would beat Detroit. They were clearly the better team, and Baltimore was laying 8. I was wrong. And I'll say it one more time. I was wrong. Detroit played very pesky defense. Detroit was good enough on offense, and quite frankly, the game was too close. Now, that's the statement. How I really feel is if Hollywood Brown didn't have the hands to play defense yesterday and actually had hands to play as a wide receiver and didn't drop 3 very easy catchable balls, 2 would have been touchdowns, 1 would have been a long gain, this wouldn't even be a game. Baltimore should have cleared this. It cost me against the spread. Let's go to Atlanta and the New York Giants. I said this is the battle of crappy teams, and one of them has to win. I did pick the Giants -3. This was a loss for me. Looking back on it from yesterday, I just don't know what to do with the New York Football Giants. You're at home. You have a quarterback that's been in the system for a couple of years. Atlanta does not have a good defense, and you just don't score the ball enough. You just don't score enough to win, and you allow Atlanta to beat you late. Atlanta's not good. But come on, Matt Ryan's been around a long time. If you give Matt Ryan an opportunity at the end because you don't put up enough points to win in the NFL, you're going to lose these games. Daniel Jones might or might not be the answer, but I'll tell you what, that offensive line and offensive coordinator Jason Garrett certainly are not the answer. And if Jason Garrett's not careful, he's going to cost Judge his head coaching job. Let's slide over to New Orleans and the New England Patriots. This was my biggest blunder of the week. I told you all in my preview show that the only reason I wasn't betting this at the sports and betting it big was because I thought the number was wrong and the number was too low. Did not understand why the New England Patriots are only favored by 3 over the New Orleans Saints, who, granted, Jameis looked good in week 1, but Jameis looked horrible in week 2, and the Saints didn't look good as a team in week 2. Did I think the Saints were going to go up to New England and actually make it a game? No. Vegas is smarter than me in this case. There's no doubt about it. Vegas had New England -3. This was a loss for me. I told you I would have taken this number at 8, definitely at 7, and I would have been even more wrong and felt dumber then. Vegas knew something I didn't. Mac Jones came back down to earth. Mac Jones looked like a rookie quarterback. What really surprised me is Bill Belichick's defense couldn't hold Jameis in check. Really blew me away. Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. I told you all I was doing it again. Told you all that I was picking the Bengals to cover the spread and to win outright. And that's exactly what Cincinnati did. With TJ Watt out, I knew that would give Joe Burrow that extra 0.2 or 0.3 seconds to be able to read the defense and get the ball out of his hand. That's exactly what happened. Pittsburgh played pretty decent defense in the first half, then of course fell apart in the second half. And here's a question for you fans out there. When was the last time the Cincinnati Bengals had a much better quarterback than the Pittsburgh Steelers? I think you have to go back to the mid-90s and maybe a little bit further back before that happened. Cincinnati was clearly the better team on the field, which I haven't been able to say in at least 2.5 decades. And Pittsburgh's quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, he just looks old. He looked like he was playing a pickup game out in the park with a bunch of, high schoolers as opposed to playing in the NFL. poor decisions, and the guy's got no gun downfield. Let's slide over to Indianapolis and Tennessee. This is where I was right. King Henry ran wild. I predicted that King Henry would run wild. Tennessee was just a much better team. It didn't help that Quentin Nelson went out with a high ankle sprain. It also didn't help that Wentz was moving around on both ankles, on two sore ankles. Even though I thought Wentz played pretty well for a guy who's 6'5" and 240 pounds on two bad ankles, I thought he moved around pretty well. Tennessee was just clearly the better team, and Frank Reich needs to figure out what he can do and what they can improve on defense to try to keep them in games. The Washington football team versus the Buffalo Bills. I thought the Washington football team would cover. I knew Buffalo was the better team. I got this at 8.5. Of course, this was a loss for me because Buffalo blew the Washington football team out. I just don't understand what's happened to the defense. I don't know what's happened to Jack Del Rio and why the defense hasn't been able to buy in. Washington, you see that they're giving effort. You see that the defensive line and the young guns are trying. Sweat's trying. They're trying to get to the quarterback, but they're always half a second away. The offense coordinators in the offseason must have really done a number on looking at the Washington football team, their schemes, their stunts, because right now Washington's got nothing. And the back end's not experienced enough to be able to stop anybody if they don't put the quarterback under pressure. Josh Allen was amazing, over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, no turnovers. He was just strong. Buffalo's a real good team, going to be a force to be reckoned with, and of course has every right to be leading the division and most likely going to win this division going away. The Los Angeles Chargers versus the Kansas City Chiefs. This was a loss for me. When was the last time that Mahomes maybe wasn't a better quarterback on the field? Yes, I said it. I think Justin Herbert outplayed Mahomes yesterday. Granted, Herbert had better protection. Mahomes didn't. But Mahomes was on the sidelines watching while the Chargers found a way to win. And kudos to their coach for having guts and not giving the ball back to Mahomes with a minute to play or 30 seconds to play or a minute and a half to play, because we know that they lose there, even though they would have gone down and had to score a touchdown, even if it was a field goal. You know Casey's going to do it because that's what they do. The Chargers went for it on what would have been 4th and 4, had the offsides, the false start, if you will, ended up being 4th and 9, and the coach still went for it. Showed great confidence in Herbert. Herbert came through. Of course, when you've got Keenan Allen out there and Williams. And kudos to Tony Romo, who called that play right before it happened, that Keenan Allen would do a little shake and bake right in front of the defensive back, then run right by him. Boom. Tony called it. Herbert called it. Herbert executed it. Allen caught it. The rest is history. The Los Angeles Chargers right now look to be the class of that division, even though they're not leading right now because they got that loss from week 2 against Dallas. I think if the Chargers and the Denver Broncos met on a neutral field right now, I like the Chargers. But hey, you can't discount those Broncos at 3-0 or those Las Vegas Raiders sitting there at 3-0 as well. Let's go to the Arizona Cardinals versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Wow, this game had me scared. It ended up being a win for me as I had Arizona minus 7.5, but Arizona was making mistakes in the first half. Jacksonville Jaguars played tough. Trevor Lawrence actually made a couple of throws, made some decent decisions in the first half. Second half was a whole different story. I thought the kick 6 was going to really hurt me in this game, but there was just too much Arizona in the second half. This was my most confident pick of the week. And of course, this was a win against the spread as Arizona ended up beating Jacksonville handily late. Let's go to the Chicago Bears and the Cleveland Browns. This was a win for me. I had Cleveland minus 7. Just thought with Justin Fields starting, having to go against Myles Garrett, it was just going to be too much Garrett in this one. I did not expect 4.5 sacks for Myles Garrett, and I also didn't expect 9 total sacks against Justin Fields and the Bears offense. Matt Nagy needs to hang 80% of this loss around his neck. How the heck do you put a rookie quarterback out there that's a mover and a shaker and make him a pocket quarterback? He's not Andy Dalton. Now we know why Mitch Trubisky had such a hard time, because they had him in an offense that was built for Andy Dalton or an Andy Dalton type, and then Mitch Trubisky always had to try to improvise and get out. Not saying that Mitch Trubisky's a good quarterback. We'll see down the road when somebody gets hurt, whether it's Josh Allen and he gets promoted to the starter at Buffalo, or if he goes to another team. But I think part of Mitch Trubisky's issue was Matt Nagy. Does Matt Nagy have a good brain? Yes. Did Matt Nagy get the Bears to the playoffs twice with Mitch Trubisky? Yes. But he didn't adjust here. He went with 5 personnel. Hudson Sports Zone fans, that's 5 blockers against 4 defensive guys. Myles Garrett's not just a normal guy. Myles Garrett's one of the 10, 15 best football players in the NFL. He's definitely one of the top 5 best pass rushers in the NFL. You think you're going to block him with some guy? Just any guy? Myles Garrett can line up all over the defensive line. Anyways, I don't want to berate this too much. Matt Nagy needed to put a 6th guy in there to block. Matt Nagy needed to keep the running back in and a tight end in. They needed to chip people. They needed to roll him out. They needed to have some designed runs. They needed to do things differently for Justin Fields so he'd be successful. Granted, Justin could have been better, but hey, folks, if you've ever been in a situation in a sport, whether it's tennis, it's golf, it's contact football, soccer, baseball at a high level, once you get dinged, once you lose your confidence, once you get punched in the mouth, as Mike Tyson said, it's a slippery slope to stand in there and be as good as you can be when you're under fire, when you're under pressure all day. You ever stood in the batter's box in baseball and looked at 90? For those of you that have, you know what happens when that ball's coming in across the plate. You feel a little bit comfortable. Once you get brushed back, once that ball hits you, or you get your bell rung, or you get your tower buzzed, believe me, it's tough to get back in that box. All right, enough on this game. This was a win for me. Cleveland was clearly the better team. Chicago has much bigger problems than who to play at quarterback. And Matt Nagy needs to stop talking during the week with, we're going to play this guy, we're going to play that guy, we're going to play these guys. This guy will be the starter when healthy. He just needs to go about his business. Let's go over to the New York Jets and the Denver Broncos. Denver was minus 10.5. This was one of the easiest picks of the week. This was a win for me. I said there'd be way too much Vic Fangio's D for Zach to overcome, and I was right. Denver, I say it every week, with Steady Teddy back there and that defense, this is a good team. They have weapons on O, they've got a solid D, and they have a quarterback that's not turning the ball over 2 or 3 times a game, sometimes 4, like they had the revolving circle quarterbacks over the last couple of years. The Jets are just overwhelmed. They don't have the talent. They're not a good team. I'm almost thinking that it could be a really good idea. No, I'm not almost thinking anymore. I'm thinking they should bench Zach Wilson. They should put him on the bench, let him learn, and keep him from getting beat up every week, because he's not as big as Sam Darnold was, and Sam got hurt standing behind that porous offensive line. It'd be better for them to bench Zach, keep Zach healthy, have him learn, have him watch, maybe put him in a couple fourth quarters when the game's out of reach and the defense isn't looking to go headhunting. But that's my thought. I don't see him making it a full season. And if he goes a full season and continues to get beat up every game, I don't see him being a good quarterback for the future. Let's go to the Tampa Bay Rams game. I had Tampa Bay in this one. This was a loss for me. Tampa Bay looked very overwhelmed. It just goes to show, if you have a defense that can get pressure up the middle with Aaron Donald, and you get Brady a little bit off his spot, if Brady's got to move 2 feet to the left, 4 feet to the right, too far up in the pocket, backpedal, if you get him off his spot where he's comfortable, you can beat him. Very few teams can get that type of pressure and do it consistently. The Rams were able to do that. This game was never really close. Sean McVay looked like a high school senior out there on, senior night. He was excited as anybody. And quite frankly, the stats don't lie. You need to be beating a McVay coach team by halftime. If you let him go in at halftime, he comes out and he's never lost as a head coach. It's a hell of a record. I have a question for you. Where the heck is the Tampa Bay defense? We know they're not a top 1, 2, or 3 defense like the Rams, but they are much better than they showed yesterday. I know they're beat up, and they lost Dean yesterday in the defensive backfield. But where's the front seven? I just didn't see enough pressure on Stafford. Stafford and McVay look like they've been together for 10 years. And this is what happens when you get a quarterback who's smart like Stafford, who never had the opportunities in Detroit. He never had the defense. He didn't have the weapons. Yeah, he had Calvin Johnson, but who else? Who was the running back when he had CJ? He never had the weapons that he has now with the Rams, and a coach that will let him use his talents, use his smarts, quite frankly, use that gun of an arm. Matt Stafford's the real deal, and I don't think there's a happier person in LA today than Matthew Stafford. It's a toss-up with him and McVay, but I'm going with Stafford. Let's slide over to Miami and the Las Vegas Raiders. I had Las Vegas here, -3. This was a push. This game could have gone either way. Miami was crushing it early, but they let Las Vegas hang around. Jacoby Brissett never looked great. I said he'd be overwhelmed in the Death Star. The D gave him a big lead early. Could the Raiders have been any worse in the first 10 minutes of the game? And missed opportunities typically in the NFL come back to beat you. And the doinked field goal that hit the upright right before the half, obviously that hurt Miami in the end. It was a 3-point spread. You miss a field goal. Granted, the Las Vegas Raiders, they missed a couple of field goals. They were not great. They ended up winning in the end. And hey, old Chucky, old Gruden, 3-0. Tied for the lead this division. I'm thinking this division might end up being the best division in all of football. Originally, beginning of the year, we thought it was going to be the NFC West. Now I'm thinking it's the AFC West. And when was the last time, it's been a handful of years, that the Raiders were undefeated, Denver was undefeated, and the Chargers had a better record than the Chiefs? Chiefs are in the cellar in that division. Certainly hadn't been in Mahomes' time. But hey, times are changing. Can't stay up top forever. Let's go over to the Seattle Seahawks versus the Minnesota Vikings. This is a huge loss for me. Seattle normally plays well in the Midwest. Seattle normally plays well on East Coast games. And Seattle played real well in the first half. Defense looked pretty good. Offense was in control. Man, tell you what, Minnesota didn't look like they were missing Dalvin Cook. But this game could have really got ugly had Dalvin Cook been healthy. Seattle. I lost this given a 1.5. Minnesota blew them out. And it wasn't even close in the second half. Colin Cowherd made a comment a couple of weeks ago on his show, The Herd, that Seattle only looks good if Russell Wilson's touching it. Since Russell Wilson doesn't play defense, I'm going to agree with Colin here. If Russell Wilson touches it, it's offensive, it's a quarterback, it's a play, it's a run, it's a throw. Yeah, Seattle's pretty good. You're going to keep you in the games, you're going to win a lot of games. But until that defense shores it up, they're a long way from being the legion of anything, including a boom. Minnesota was just a better team today. I think Seattle, they're a fringe playoff team now. I thought they would be a guaranteed playoff team. Right now, I'm not so sure. Let's go to the Sunday night Green Bay versus San Francisco game. Another loss for me. 3 straight losses to finish up last night. It was brutal for me. San Francisco recently has owned Green Bay and Rodgers when they play in Levi Stadium, when Jimmy G's healthy. And the team is mostly healthy. Last night, Jimmy G played good enough to win. Aaron Rodgers was definitely the Aaron Rodgers of old. He definitely played better than anybody else on the field. And the connection between Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams is unbelievable. That was the difference in the game. Granted, Green Bay played better all game. Green Bay was the overall better team most of the game. But they didn't put San Francisco away. They let San Francisco have an opportunity, and Jimmy G didn't disappoint. Granted, he had a better get Mako at the end, but he also had a drive to go down and get points and tie it up. Unfortunately, they scored a little early. What I mean by a little early is they ran the ball in. I looked at the clock and I'm like, oh my gosh, they just scored a touchdown and they have 34 seconds left. 34 seconds is a long time for people like Rodgers and Mahomes. And of course, it ended up hurting them. Would have been better if San Francisco would have played not too high D and would have actually forced the ball to the outside and played an inside zone or inside man-to-man, single high to make sure that you don't get one over the top. But man, you can't play a big arc of a defense and give up the middle of the field. Rodgers ate them up. So that's it, folks. I went 6-8-1 through the first 15 games. Yes, I do have Dallas tonight. I just don't know this game what Philadelphia has to offer. Is Hurts the real deal? Is Prescott the real deal? Is he back? Is he better than he was before he got injured, like he says? I'm not sure, but I've got to take the home team here, -4. Hudson Sports Zone, it's been a pleasure talking today at this recap. I will do a short recap tomorrow on the Monday Night Football game between those Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. Shout out to Tony Romo for the great call live. Shout out to Colin Cowherd for calling a lot of things right on the carpet. And shout out to Dan Orlowski, who pretty much dressed Matt Nagy down and described on live television earlier today what the Bears' offensive line did wrong and where they were completely overmatched, and that is the coaching. So I end it with today. You have to set your team up for success. You have to set your rookie quarterbacks up for success. And most importantly, when people in sports look themselves in the mirror, they have to be honest with what they have at their disposal, what they see, rally the men, have a common theme, and play together for a common goal. We'll see you in a couple of days, Hudson Sports Zone fans. Thank you very much for your time. Jerry Hudson signing out.